Greetings, Star Citizens, and welcome to Flight Deck. This is a weekly podcast about Star Citizen and other gamer culture topics. I'm your host, Link Static MDK, and with me, as always, is Paper Thin.
It's a special day today. Whee!
Sweet! Yeah, we are doing a special Saturday show, which we do not intend to continue, so don't look for us on Saturdays typically. We'll be talking about the Persistent Universe Town Hall presentation, as well as, the individual panels. Panel 1, The Path You Choose. Panel 2, A Living, Breathing World. Panel 3, Getting Social. And then their games idea forum that they did with everybody at the town hall. So let's jump right into it. First one we're going to be talking about was the Persistent Universe Town Hall presentation. And for anybody who wanted to check out any of these videos, they're actually available on the Star Citizen YouTube. So if you go straight there, they'll have them all listed in their video history. So for this one, it was kind of a informal discussion between Chris and Tony. They were just kind of going back and forth while going through some slides talking about everything that they have going on. First thing they showed us was the Terra Tower Foyer, which is apparently Terra Tower is a 3 kilometer tower that's kind of like your entry point onto Terra itself. So it's kind of like this big, imposing, massive structure when you first enter. And from the screenshots they showed of the interior, it looked pretty cool. But
Yeah, totally awesome.
Yeah.
Just very, very cool. When I saw that, I'm like, awesome.
But,
That's
yeah.
yes. I can't wait to stand at the base of that thing and like look up at it.
Well, it reminds me of like anytime you go in like any MMO and you've got that first time you see one of their massive cities, and then
Yeah.
you become jaded like the 20th time you walk in, you're like whatever. But that first time you're like, dude, this is cool.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, standard. I've seen this all before. Who cares? So I'm sure we'll be that way after like the fifth or
Oh
sixth
yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then some question was about how can pirates use UEE currency if they're wanted criminals, and it's all electronic, and they kind of skirted the issue, and they're like, they just can't shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like Tony and Chris are they having ongoing discussions about this.
Hmm.
They talk more about it later again in one of the other videos, and it's clear they don't really have a solution that either of them likes yet. You know what I mean?
Well,
But they're
yeah.
working on it.
I'm honestly, I don't think it's that big a deal. Frankly,
Um,
I think the money system should be like Chris said, just separate from the government system, and everybody can
right,
just use it. So.
right. I think that makes the most sense.
And it's the least amount of hassle, and it's one of those things you just had to kind of forgive in games, and
Right.
it's too breaking of the mechanics to put a specific weird crap in.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing he did mention as well that I was kind of looking forward to is they're going to have some design posts specifically around piracy and mining, so they'll get more involved in that, and they actually go pretty in depth with a discussion in one of the later videos on mining and how it's going to work. And I was like, after listening to him, super excited to mine.
Yes.
I was like,
Yes.
I didn't think I'd be so excited to be like splitting open rocks and taking ore, but that sounds super fun. Yeah.
I feel like they watched the movie Armageddon and were like,
Oh
we're
yeah,
gonna
totally.
make mining like this movie, and I'm like, yes,
Yes,
awesome.
I'm going to totally pretend I'm Bruce Willis every time we go into an asteroid. Just start barking orders and calling people
Yeah.
kid, and one of
And I'm
us
gonna
has
be.
to be Steve Buscemi, right?
I was just gonna say that you
Yes,
took it away from me.
we're
You
in.
took it
We're.
away from me.
This is the problem when we know each other so well.
Yeah. It's like I'm gonna ride the mining equipment and go crazy.
Yoo-hoo. We'll give you the lasers. That's the most awful thing we could give the crazy person.
Yeah.
All right. And then we had Star Citizen 1 version 1.1, which they're saying is coming out in around March, April. Will be hopefully the social module plus the FPS stuff that they've been announcing and talking about.
Yep.
So with that social module, we'll be seeing a planet-side environment, which should be ArcCorp, that you can kind of wander around and do some window shopping, but not actual shopping. We'll have multiplayer hangars, so now you can invite your friends to your hangar and have them chill out and walk around. There's going to be the early Moby-Glass, of course, so which we talked about this week, going along with that window shopping. And then they're also adding in the SimPod to your hangar, where oh my God, we're gonna get FPS,
Yep.
and then we're also going to have instead of hitting escape and kind of breaking that immersion, a more interactive feel of jumping into Arena Commander and flying against people. So it's kind of like a real world in-game sim version, which sounds
Yep.
weird when I say it out loud like that.
Yeah, but the sim pod looked pretty cool. And I just can't wait to like be able to walk around your hangar and check out
Oh yeah,
your
totally.
ships and
Like,
yeah,
jump in. I'm interested to get back into your constellation because I haven't had a constellation since I traded my Phoenix for a Reclaimer.
right.
I love the constellation. I miss my Phoenix, but how could I not trade it for a Reclaimer? It's,
Oh, I know.
uh,
Especially with how fun mining sounds like it's gonna be.
oh yeah,
Like,
totally. And
oh my God.
salvage. I
Yeah.
imagine salvage is going to work similar, where you have lasers like cutting
Yep.
open chunks of ships and like tractor beaming the parts in, and oh,
Yep.
so good.
Very excited.
Well, and then they also mentioned there's going to be some early NPC population stuff. Maybe not a lot of interactions, but they want to have some NPCs around for you to look at and interact with somewhat. So we'll see how far they get with that.
Yeah,
Um,
they said later on that the NPCs will be about 40 to 50% of what they plan on having them be able to do and interact
yeah,
in the persistent universe. So when it comes out, so you know, it'll be they'll be buggy, they'll be funny, it'll be cool, it'll
you
be
know,
neat.
you know what sucks about watching these videos is like I always want to talk to you as I'm watching them, and it's
Yep.
like no, just write it down and save it, and then you forget what you wanted to say, and it's like oh, and then you're gonna mention it later after the podcast, whatever.
Yeah.
There's just so much cool stuff this time. Like everything they talked about, it just made me more excited and more willing to forego sleep and or eating to play more hours of Star Citizen.
Yeah, when I first started watching these videos, I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome! This
Hmm.
is like so much new information, and it's all great. Oh man, can't wait for Mike and I to talk about it." We've had to wait like a week and a half because we're like,
Yeah,
"Well, we're gonna need to do a completely separate podcast about this. It's just too much information."
yeah. Oh, and Mike is Link, by the way.
Yeah,
we,
and Clinton is paper thin. We've given up on.
we've given up on keeping just straight nicknames because
Especially,
when we
right.
stream, we always call each other by our first names anyway. So
Yeah,
there's little point, but we'll still try and do Link and Paper just so it's a little bit easier to differentiate, especially if we start having more people named Mike on, for example.
that's true. Yeah.
um, and then we also had the jump point relay they talked about a little bit, which is kind of like robot carrier pigeons, is what it sounded like to me, where you've got like messages and stuff that go through the jump point with these little relay drones that can apparently be intercepted and have their information stolen or altered. So that should be fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of what the Herald's going to be
Hmm.
involved in. So it's pretty cool. I like your analogy, robot carrier pigeons. That's good.
Yep, yep. I came all of 2 seconds for that to come into my brain, and I was super proud.
Your mind was ablaze with genius.
Oh yeah, it always is. It's ablaze with something. Well, and then they had the buggy skins they talked about, and we're like, yeah, we know all about buggy skins, but then they're like, well, this is good to have because then it goes into the paint systems, and we're like, yeah, we know all about that because you've talked about that too. So,
Yep.
not gonna get too in depth there. And
Nope.
then they showed some Mobiglass contact UI mock-up so you can see what the contact list they're thinking of having it look like and so forth. Not really in depth at present, just a generic here's your list of people.
And I think we
Um,
covered that a little bit on our last podcast.
yeah, and that's in their
Anyway.
design post if anybody wants to take a closer look. They also have, like we mentioned, you can join a friend's hangar through the elevators after they invite you, and then you can also through those same elevators be going to ArcCorp, which is kind of your first landing zone where you're going to have the shops and everything available, and kind of give you a feel of what it's like to walk around in universe,
Yep.
in more than just your hangar, which is a windowless, depressing room, typically. Yeah, and then we also have the what's available in those shops should be determined kind of by supply and demand. So, if they don't have a lot of these rifles in stock, you won't see them on the shelves, that type of thing. So, pretty cool.
Yeah.
I already mentioned that the Moby Glass example would be used for shopping in there. They are going to give us a taste of early inventory screens. So, what things will look like and how you store them and how you fit them and what it will look like equipping them and so forth. Um, and with that as well, speaking of equipping, there's also going to be customs areas when you're entering these landing zones. So, you know, first time you go through customs, they might check you for weapons and, that type of thing. See if you're allowed to be there, if you're a criminal and you've committed too many crimes, keep you from entering if you have. There'll be like a medical area to this landing zone where you can buy medical items, like, they're mentioning defibrillators, gauze, whatever
Right.
random medical stuff you might need. There's the Dumpers Depot, which I think is more of like they're used and worn ship parts. It's kind of like a used salvage shop.
Yeah.
Um, Astro Armada, that's kind of like their high-end ship dealer. Like they're saying Ferraris and stuff like that. But I saw they had an Avenger in there, so I wasn't too impressed.
Oh, shots
I know
fired.
I wasn't the only one thinking it.
No.
I know I
Oh.
wasn't the only one thinking it. Like if they had had an M50, I would have been like, all right, that makes sense.
Those poor Avenger owners.
Yeah, like it's an Avenger. Yeah. I'm never gonna like the Avenger. I'm sorry, unless they add ability to put more weapons on it than the one gun. I'm never gonna like it compared to other
Well, it's
ships at the
got
same size.
it's got three guns, I think, doesn't it? It has the one front gun and then two like class one side.
Does it?
I
I
think
thought it
I think
only
so.
had the front mounted
No,
gun
the
and then
front gun is
missiles.
like what's supposed to be its like
Main weapon.
unique and yeah, cool thing about it, and it's
Hmm.
the and that gun is only available for the Avenger.
Okay.
But from what I understand right now, most people don't really like that gun, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it got some buffs.
Just like most people don't like the gauze cannon on the 300s.
Right.
Yeah. We'll see. Anyway, enough about the Avenger. And then they'll have different quality shops going along with that. So, I think they were mentioning they want about 10 different variations of each type of shop. So you can have like your mom and pop stores or your big chain stores or your high-end dealers, however you want to look at it.
Right.
Um, I assume some places you'll go to specifically because it will be that high-end one-of-a-kind dealer and you'll go out of your way to get there just for that specific gun that you can only get there, or that specific ship part you can only get there, that type of thing.
Right. Yeah, and he did mention that. Chris Roberts did much later on
Mhm.
in the I think it was in the question and answer forum
Right.
where he said that there'll be like some crazy old hermit out on a planet that's near Vandal space that has a
Old Ben.
repeater. Yeah, it's like 20% better
Yeah.
than any other one you can buy. So there will be stuff like that, which is good, necessary, and it'll be fun
Well, and
to,
it makes
challenging.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it'll take a lot to get there, so not everybody will want to put forth the effort if it's not really worth it.
Right, and the people who do put forth the effort, can maybe buy like 10 of them and come back and sell them
Oh yeah,
at like
at a
Terra.
premium. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, and then they'll also have a trade and development office, which is kind of like their mission and economic area, which they were mentioning will kind of have a lot more traffic. You'll be able to see like ships going in and out in the background, that type of thing, which will be pretty cool. Like I'll be interested to see what the market looks like and what kind of missions are offered and what you can do.
Yeah.
And with that, of course, we'll have the Moby Glass mission mock-up that you can look at there. Um, One of the other things they were talking about in general was like a loot system and like what happens if you take somebody out. Essentially, yeah, you can just loot their body like it's going out of style and take everything off of them, which
Right.
I totally agree with, frankly. Like it,
Yeah.
it, it never makes sense. Oh, I just take his pistol or something like that. That should keep people from always carrying all their best stuff on them at all times.
Yep.
Like there's no reason for you to walk around with your super awesome pistol when you could buy 5 different smaller ones that if you lose it, oh well.
Right, exactly. And it makes sense because you only want to bring with you what's essential for what you're doing.
Yeah, especially
If
with
I'm just going
limited
shopping,
inventory.
right? If I'm just going shopping, there's no reason I need to bring, my best assault rifle and my
Hmm.
rocket launcher and some grenades. You
I mean,
know,
yeah. Plus, if you're like assaulting a pirate base, then that's where it makes sense to have your powered armor on, your
right,
rifle, your grenades, all that junk, and your like
right,
night vision goggles. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. That said, it would be totally badass to like in a new player area just walk around with your big ass powered rifle. Yeah, move along, citizen. Move along.
Pick up that can.
Well, then I did like the cargo system they mentioned a bit too, going along with just in general, like loot and inventory and all that, you have essentially your stuff will fit inside the cargo canisters, and then each container will kind of have the stasis field, which keeps that in place. And then to move it around, it'll kind of have like a maglev field built in. So like you might have like a maglev stool or something that lets you, that you put into the container, and then you can move it around however you want. But then you also have different types of containers for different types of stuff. So like if you have a liquid, you'll have a liquid container. If you have like parts, you'll have a parts container, so forth. So
Yeah, super in depth. Really awesome to see that they're giving this much attention to detail for something that seems like it might be tedious or boring, but this makes it a little more interesting, and you have to be a little more, conscious about how you're organizing your inventory. And, yeah, so I like it.
well, and did you catch that part he was talking about? Oh, and you can even EVA out into space and move your cargo that way too. I'm like, ah, cool. So we
Yeah,
could do like trades in space, whereas like I open up my freelancer's back door, you open up your constellation's lower ramp, and then like I EVA over with a couple of containers and put them in your hold, that type of
yeah.
thing.
We're just gonna do it to do it. Like
Oh
we're
yeah,
not.
totally. Like there'll be no reason. It'll be like the most worthless. It'll be rock or
Yeah.
something. It'll be like containers just full of rocks, and I'm like, here you go, and you're like, this is sweet, and I'm like, this is sweet.
And then some pirate comes and they're like,
They're
all
like,
you guys are doing is transferring rocks.
rocks. Yeah, you're in the middle of nowhere in deep space. I thought it would be some cool loot. No, it's just
Yeah.
rocks, dude. Some
No.
pebbles. It'd be like, this was totally not worth the 12 missiles I shot at you guys. And I'll be like, no, it wasn't. You're a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
uh, But I totally see in retrospect how this looks super suspicious and opportunistic for you.
right.
Oh man. And then you also have navigation. Speaking of out in space, you'll have various systems, trade routes, all that except available. That they kind of had a little bit of a demo up where like a hollow image brings up in your cockpit, and then you like press it. It looked a little too similar to the stupid hollow table though, so it got me a little worried. I'm like, wait a minute, that's very similar to a current thing that we do not like.
Yeah. That's probably, I think, our biggest gripe about the game right now is the hollow table. I can't. That's the thing that drives me the most
Well,
nuts.
prior to the hollow table, it was not having a friends list and being able to join people.
Yes.
Now we have that. So
Yes, that's
yeah,
true.
I would agree. That is our biggest gripe at present, is
Yeah.
the interface and control system. So hopefully when 1.1 comes out, that will all be saved and fixed, and we will no longer have that to gripe about, and we'll be on to a next topic, which will
Yeah.
be my boots make too much noise when I'm trying to crouch around corners and sneak up on somebody or something like that. Because the FPS will be out, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
saying,
got it.
we're gonna have gripes about the FPS. It doesn't matter
Oh
how
man.
good they make it. With how much FPS we've played, we're gonna have something that we're gonna give com commentary and feedback. I was trying. I like in my mouth and face and head parts, combining commentary and feedback into one. It was combactary, and I was just like, no, that word's not a word.
That's a pretty interesting portmanteau you just put together right there.
Yeah, that's why I stopped myself from saying it, but now I've explained it all, so now I look like an idiot. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on.
They did also show that they'll have that jump point concept too, going along with that cockpit mock-up and navigation and how it looks, and some baller gifs and screenshots are out there, which we previously mentioned, and oh man, pretty cool stuff.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And then some of the early alpha locations actually have been mentioned, although they didn't go into super huge detail, which leads me to believe that some of this is probably going to change. Not heavily, but certain parts. So, first one was mentioned was Nyx, which was a lightly regulated planet where you can likely go to sell stolen goods, that type of thing. It's essentially the main hub or port on Nyx is a huge excavated crater that was originally a mining colony. So that's been repurposed by disreputable vagrants since then, which cool.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't want to visit that because I don't get shot and have my stuff stolen. So, I'll visit it, but if I've got people to watch my back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that seems like one of those things where you're going to need some NPC bodyguards or just some friends to
Yeah.
come with you just in case that the more that you're gonna get attacked. And in fact, it's pretty likely you're gonna get attacked there.
Well, and like they're talking about parts of the city don't have like working power and like it's dark and brooding, and I'm like, I don't want to be like walking around Nyx and like hit an elevator and then all of a sudden have it plummet to my death because the thing's out of order and there's no sign, you know?
Yeah, I don't think they'll do anything quite like that, but I would
Yeah.
imagine there'll be some surprises in store.
It'll be like, oh, the power is out and you need to get this door open and there's a bunch of weird alien dudes with guns coming after you. Have fun.
Hooray!
Hooray! And I'll be like, this is the greatest thing ever, but I'm scared. Well, and then you have Virgil, which looks cool. It had like lots of plants and stuff, and that's about all they could say about it. It's like, here's
Yeah,
a concept screenshot. There you go, Virgil.
yeah.
I'm like,
They
all
didn't give us
right,
much in this about that, so okay, cool.
yeah. And then we had Helios, which actually was kind of interesting because it's a water planet, and like the only city there is this huge walled-in landing zone city, and like you see in the picture anyway, these large waves that like come up to the city's walls. And apparently, like when you're flying around, you're gonna have to dodge those waves when you're like if you're wanting to visit other parts of the planet.
Yeah, I really liked the concept for this planet. It felt very, ancient Greece, obviously with the name Helios,
Hmm.
but I liked it. I liked like surfing those waves with your ship could be kind
Yeah,
of fun.
that's what I was thinking. Like we could put your constellation as like a surfboard and just stand on top of it. You know,
Yes, yes, we have to do that.
that would be so much fun. Like
Oh man,
maybe not the constellation. What would be a better ship to use? Like
I
an
don't know.
M50 or
The constellation's pretty surfboard looking.
I know that's what made me think of it, but like maybe like a 300 or an M50
Yeah,
instead would work.
that's what I was thinking. A gladius.
Clearly, this is a great plan, and we need to do it.
A gladius. Gladius is kind of
Well, it's got the
flat.
wings, though.
Yeah,
I think the
that's
wings
true.
might mess it up. Whatever. I'm sure it won't work, and we'll die anyway, so it doesn't matter.
That's the point.
Yeah, that is the point. Um, moving on, they had like, "Hey, will aliens be in it?" And he's like, "Yes, of course. Here's a picture of Jean. Now shut up." That's it. That's aliens.
And
Great. Good
yeah,
talk, guys.
they also talked about because somebody was, and I don't know if it was here or later, where somebody was looking for more information on the Tavaran, and he said that right now the Tavaran were too much like the Jean, so they're going through a rework with them.
Well, I think that was his the other one we were talking about a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that like I know we talked about that on Wednesday, but I forget which part of that was. Like if it was
Oh
part of the
yeah,
PTU or if it was separate. Either
yeah,
way, yeah, it's been mentioned, so who cares what it's from?
right.
Yeah, I like I said though, the Tavaran sound like Klingon-ish to me, which make them super interesting.
Yes.
So. Then they did like a question and answer portion, and in case you're wondering why we're kind of going so fast through these, it's because oh my god, there's a lot of content. And we're not even anywhere near down our list of notes. So
Yeah.
questions for pirates. You know what's involved with that. Essentially, this is the first point where they mentioned there's not really going to be character classes. So essentially, if you want to be a pirate, you got to outfit your ship and you know sneak past authorities, jam distress signals, use stealth tactics, board ships, eject cargo, etc. So that's the one thing I love about this game is it's all going to be skill based. So whatever you want to do, do it. Just make sure you're equipped for it.
Yep. I love that there's no like leveling or any of that kind of stuff. The NPCs level, but that's fine. That's different.
Yeah.
But you yourself, it's all about your skill and just doing whatever you feel like doing. Love it. Just absolutely love it.
Well, it's all about play and counterplay mechanics. It's not about stupid, oh, I've got higher numbers because I spent 2 years farming in the forest of blah 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 with my +3 ogre slaying spoon. And you're like, great guy, great, that's great. Not that I'm saying I haven't done that. I'm just saying it's annoying.
Yeah, it was fun once. Now I'm over it.
Yeah. Well, and then there's no way to permanently hire NPCs went along with that too. But you can give them monthly payments to keep them around, and they will get better over time based on certain metrics behind the scenes. So hopefully, eventually, I'll have like a couple of NPCs that are like my top ace escort pilots, and I'll have my really good mining crew that I've set up and so forth. Um, but that I assume will take months of work and real world effort. And
Yeah.
then we'll also have some ships will have special cargo holds, which will mask signatures going along with that pirating stuff. Although they said stealing cargo is easier because it's easier to hold that and mask it. Whereas if you have like a ship that you've stolen, it's a lot harder to hide that fact from like the authorities.
Right.
Plus, it's after you've stolen this cargo and ships, it's that's only halfway there. You've still got to go through the whole effort of selling that to disreputable worlds like Nyx or oh crap, what's the one with the Olympus carrier that's crashed on it?
Oh, I don't remember now.
Yeah, but you know that world too is also
Yep.
a pirate world that they've talked about.
Yes.
And then, with that, somebody's like, well, can your NPCs go rogue and, like, mutiny and take your ship? And they're like, no. So I'm,
No.
I'm glad of that. That just seems like it would be annoying.
Yeah, that's a little much. I
Mm.
mean, that would get really annoying really fast because that gives like larger organizations the
Oh,
ability to
yeah.
just like throw down a ton of money and just screw over some smaller organization by buying out their NPCs under their feet, which
Like,
just isn't fun.
we
Like I
need
get that
another
it's
reclaimer to get our fleet up to snuff. Oh, here's this tiny organization. Let's just offer all the NPCs that crew it, a million credits because we can afford it.
right.
There you go. I don't know why you'd spend a million credits instead of just buying a reclaimer, but you get my idea.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked, will there be movies and TV for Star Citizen? And their response was like, well, yeah, eventually we're planning to do some in fiction stories and stuff like that. And that was like, to me, super cool. Of like, yeah, I don't want there to be a Star Citizen TV show or like a feature movie. But if it's all like in fiction stuff and they're like, hey, check out this trailer for this new expansion we're coming out with and it's all badass and baller, I'm into that. That's cool.
Right, and I'm totally fine with like there being like in-game sort of quote-unquote campaigns
Hmm.
that have like cool in-game cutscenes and that kind of thing. I like those. I think those are fun. That's
Like,
actually like one of my favorite parts of the Old Republic.
oh yeah,
Was the
those
cutscenes and the
trailers
dialogue.
and yeah.
Yeah,
Plus, you could
yeah,
have like some really cool fight sequences that they put together, like some Vandal Raiders or like shooting this Idris Corvette and like it gets disabled, and then like they cut to the inside and like there's this combat inside going down between the Vandal and the Defenders, and
yeah,
there's just so much you could do with something like that.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and then with that, they're also talking about adding cinematic camera tools so that hopefully players can make stuff like that on their own, which I would totally play around with. I don't know if I'd do anything like professional level, but I'd make little videos here or there. Why not?
Yeah, I think that's something I just kind of anticipated they were going to put in.
Yeah,
So it's good to hear they are.
yeah. Plus, we'll also have combat will only be personal. There's not going to be any stupid nuke 'em from orbit type missile systems or anything like that, which
Yep.
yeah, it's not realistic to what will probably be like at that time, but also way more fun. So who
Right.
cares?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's the sensor handoff gameplay, which you talked about. We have a little bit with the Hornet tracker at the moment, but the bigger ships definitely you'll be able to like mark targets and so forth, and there'll be like a full-time position, which is just all analyzing sensor data and reporting to your captain. Which totally, by the way, I totally want to do at some point. Just like have us and a bunch of our people in the organization as like a bridge crew, and like you know be barking out orders and stuff like that. That would be so much fun.
Oh yeah.
Like that one Artemis game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've played Artemis quite a few times, and it's a lot of fun to be the captain. Even though a lot of people don't like to do it because it is challenging. You
I'd
really
love
have
to
to.
be the captain. I can
Yeah.
bark out bullshit orders like no tomorrow.
You really got to juggle what's going on, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it is a lot of fun, and it's fun to do the other positions in that game as well. Especially, I really liked engineering. That was a lot of fun.
Helm to one way. What the hell are you talking about? Which way do you want me to go? I just told you.
I know. Actually, it will be something. There will be a bit of a learning curve because
Yeah.
the most efficient way to give out orders is not just like turn left. Like you actually have to give out directions and headings,
Uh,
and people have to learn that.
Like I
And
imagine it's going to be very similar to like how submarines work, where it's like up
yeah,
bubble 30 degree, down bubble 30 degree.
exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah,
So cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, well, and then the segue and the next thing they talked about kind of was the loot system, and can you gain weapons as well as um, other types of equipment in like non-pirate or bounty hunter situations where you just blow the crap out of people and take their stuff after they're all dead. And he was saying actually it's probably better not to try and gain loot in those situations. You'd probably be better off salvaging because if you think about it, when you're in combat and you're fighting people, stuff tends to get damaged. So,
Right.
if you loot it, you might have great a bunch of broken pieces. Whereas if you're like salvaging a derelict ship, you find a alien gun there that is in mostly pristine condition.
Yeah, that mostly made sense. I was a little confused. Like, I think maybe he didn't quite understand the question because, like, I could see like loot being okay. Well, they got a couple cargo containers that were damaged. I could
Mhm.
take those off, then salvage the ship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure actually. We'll have to see what it all looks like in game, frankly, to know like what's the best way to get stuff.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. And then they talked a little bit about interplanetary travel will be instant slow, quantum travel, and jump points. The difference between the two: quantum travel is the one that you move at point 0.2 the speed of light and takes you roughly 10 minutes to travel from one side of a system to the other side, assuming standard size system. And apparently, like there'll be obstacles along the way, so that's not even like truly accurate because you're probably gonna have to stop a couple of times and readjust your course.
Right.
And then the jump points, of course, we've talked about is where you go into like a little wormhole and navigate through it to get to another system. So
Yep.
sweet. And then, like we mentioned, there's the Sim Pod, which will it have any other games besides FPS and Arena Commander? And didn't sound like there would be, but there'll be so many variety of things you can do in FPS and Arena Commander that who cares? So
Yeah, I kind of started thinking when somebody asked that. I'm like, well, what other games are you looking for here? Like
Pac-Man,
chess, like 3D chess? I don't know, Pac-Man.
Pac-Man.
But that
As it
one
needs.
Budweiser did live action Pac-Man. It's already been done.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, that makes me wonder if there will be like user-created game types too for FPS and stuff like that, where you could have like a user-created Bomberman or whatever.
That would
It's
be
all
fun,
first
actually.
person. Yeah,
That'd
that'd
be
be,
nice.
that'd be crazy. Well, and then let's cut to the next panel, which is panel one, the path you choose. So for this one, we had Jason Hutchins who's a senior producer was kind of hosting it for him. You had Tony Zerovic, which I'm probably butchering his pronunciation, which is the game director for the Persistent Universe. Chris Roberts, who, as we all know, is the CEO, and then Mark Skelton, who's kind of their art director, were the three panelists, and they were asking questions of them and going over all the changes. So the first section that they kind of talked about was customizing characters and everything that's going to be involved in that. Which, wow, it sounds like quite a bit actually, more than I was thinking they would have at the start. Um, so first thing they mentioned was kind of like this layering mechanic where you can have shirts and then over the shirts you can have jackets. You can have your clothing untucked or tucked in, and with that will give a variety of looks and appearances for people. Uh, they also were doing complete body scans now of character models to give them a higher level of fidelity and detail for them to use. And with that, they're going to have a facial update that they're working on with Relateral, who apparently worked on Rise, just to give people an idea on that, where with that more level of detail, they're going to have even more facial features and face scanning and body scanning and all that they've got set up in the UK. So it just sounds like, wow, there's a ton going into this, and I hope my computer can handle it.
Right.
you know, um, and then one of the things they were talking about is muscle flow, and they want fluid facial and body animation and how it looks, and like it just sounded like this is going to be a level of detail that I'm going to have to put to low on my graphical settings.
Yeah, this is just their commitment to making this as realistic of a universe as possible. It's just incredible. But a
Yeah.
lot of it's because of how much money they've raised. I mean,
Oh yeah.
fortunately,
If you've got
people
this
like
much money, you
us,
might as well
yeah,
spend it.
yeah, people like us spend a lot of money on this game. So,
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure I've paid somebody's weekly paycheck for them.
right?
Yeah. Well, and then you also have hair, which they want to make look decent too. So they were talking about using trace effects, but one of the things about trace effects I know is it doesn't quite work properly on certain graphics cards. I think it's AMD. Like,
Oh,
there's this huge issue with like the frames dropping when you use trace effects on those graphics card because it wasn't quite ported over correctly. So like that made me a little concerned, but hopefully they'll try it out and realize first before they go with that system alone, or they'll have figured out a way to make it not drop your frames significantly.
Well, that'll be interesting because I know AMD is already sponsoring this game.
Well,
Um,
and
so
yeah, and like I think they use trace effects in the game with Lara Croft, the new one, where she's got
yeah,
like that ponytail and it like blows around and stuff. It looks good, but like I said, it makes your frames drop, and that's just one character model's hair. You know, that's
right.
not 20, 100, or however many you have. So.
Yep. That'll be interesting.
Then we also had customization that went along with that too. So customizing your character, they were talking about you can make them fat, you can make them thin, that type of thing. But actually, this is the one area where I'm kind of concerned and I don't want them to do it. Because I'm thinking, like, in an FPS situation, why wouldn't you just make your character the smallest and the thinnest possible so that your targeting cross section was as small as possible so you take less hits?
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
You
I mean,
know?
he had mentioned later on that there was going to be a maximum and minimum for how tall and wide you can make yourself because you got to be able to fit into the pilot's chairs.
Right, but
You
you're going
know.
to have a huge advantage being at the extreme end of the minimum versus somebody at the extreme end of the maximum in terms of your overall cross section.
Yeah, that's true for FPS. That's a good point. I guess I would do nothing but make my character the thinnest and smallest I could.
Totally, just so you have the advantage. That's I'm thinking
Yeah.
about posting in the forums about that and saying, "Hey, guys, hold on." you know,
Yeah.
this
That's a
is
good point.
why this is why Halo everyone's the same size.
Right.
you know,
No, I think that makes sense. It's actually a really good point. You should bring that up.
yeah. Unless there's some sort of hitbox range that's going to be the same regardless of what your character looks, which they could do.
Yeah, they could do that.
I don't know. Well, and then going along with customization, you can have tattoos, tramp stamps, whatever. Beards, but that goes along with that same hair trace effects thing. So right now it's just all clean shaven people.
Yeah.
Then the next section they talked about was starting the game, what it's going to look like for you. You'll pick a starting planet that you essentially begin the game in. And then on that starting planet, you'll have your own hangar, which will essentially be where you start in. So your hangar that you set up now will be where everything is, and in there you'll have your sim pod, so you can jump into Arena Commander, FPS Commander, whatever they're going to call it. And then that hangar itself will be what you customize and essentially live in. So you'll be able to add additional rooms, add your swag,
Yeah.
use that elevator then to travel to different locations on that planet, to marketplace, wherever, your friend's hangar. And then the cool thing they were talking about is they want to limit the amount of ships that are on display to like 5 in the hangar. And they're like, well, how can we do that but still have it swap out your ships? So they're thinking about doing like some sort of underground Ferris wheel system like they have with the parking garages in like Asia, where you could
Yep.
have a car on an elevator just lift up into position and then it's there. And I thought that would look so cool, especially if they like add the modeling of the ship coming into view and then sliding in and then the doors shutting and all that.
Yeah, I saw a couple of those when I was in Korea, and they are really cool. They're like fun to watch. They're really interesting.
Well,
I should have taken some pictures.
I think they had one in like Mission Impossible 4, and that's the
Oh,
only
did they?
time I've actually seen one was in film. So, I'm
I
jealous, but
haven't seen that movie, so
yeah. I don't know why I saw that movie. I just remember it was in it because I thought, "Oh, that's a cool and good idea."
yeah.
Because it saves in space. Anyway, moving on. And then the larger ships they were talking about, will they be on a landing pad that's kind of separate from your hangar, or will they be up in orbit? And it's kind of like being determined what's the maximum cutoff size for ships that you can A, fit in your hangar, B, fit on a landing pad separate from your hangar, just to just shove them all into orbit once they're beyond a certain mass.
Right.
So that was cool. Then, speaking of landing zones in that area, can you carry guns? Yes. Why do we allow you to carry guns? So we can have unexpected events that will be crazy town. So like that jerk, he killed me. Well, he gets banned or whatever. Or maybe you're
Right.
going down a seedy alley and you deserve to get shot because you're stupid. I'm just saying. Yeah.
Hey, sometimes you got to get to the black market dealers, man.
Well, and like
You
the
got to take
time,
the risk.
yeah, and the time of the day, it sounds like will affect what makes a zone safe too. So, like if it's late at night, there'll be less cops around, that type of thing. So,
Right. Right.
yeah, that sounds cool. And then, but what about griefers and QQ and sad face? Well, we're going to prevent griefers essentially by having customs every time they try and join that planet or that instance, determine if they can enter or carry any weapons. So, like, let's say First offense, you can't carry weapons. Second offense, you can't even enter. Third offense, you're banned for a day, you know.
Right.
So,
And even beyond that, they're going to have instances where, if the more you grief, the more likely you are to be in the same instances with other griefers.
yeah,
So if you don't grief a lot, you won't be having to deal with,
yeah.
PC griefers at
That
least,
that was
NPC griefers, but
that was so awesome. I'm like, I wish League and all these other games would do that same
oh
thing.
my god, I know.
Could you imagine if the people with like the highest reports only ever played with the people with the other highest reports and they're
Oh,
just
it'd be
messing with each
so
other?
good.
Yeah,
See,
it would
but
be
League won't do that because then like half their user base would quit.
because they're like, I only grieve 30% of the time. Why am I
Right.
with the guy who grieves 40% of the time?
Right, exactly. It's like cheese. Like blame everybody else for your own stupidity.
Yeah. Well, and then with that as well, you'll have 90% of the population is going to be artificial intelligence controlled, and 10% of it will be players. So, if you're going to grief, chances are you're going to have to do it to NPCs more of the time anyway, because you're going to be running into them as way more often than you do other players. Um, and then like we said, they'll have that escalating punishment system. So,
Right.
I so love that idea of instancing griefers, though. It's so simple, but so genius.
It is. It's a really good idea.
Yeah. Then the other part of these landing areas essentially is you're going to have shops. So in those shops, you'll have clothing shops. You'll have ship shops. You'll have scrap metal shops, weapon shops. We mentioned a couple of them previously already, but you'll have Astro Andromeda. You'll have Dumpers Depot, Cubby Blast, which is a weapons shop. Hospital, the commodities market, all of those various things that you can use and go to and buy and purchase, which with 1.1 will essentially just be window shopping. You can't really buy anything, but hopefully we'll get a good idea of what's available at each place.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I think it sounds like you're going to be able to use your Moby Glass to at least get information on the items too.
Hmm.
So that'll be fine.
This is a frag grenade, this is a stun grenade, and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and then they talked a little bit about occupations and specializations, which they actually spent a great deal of time on the end of this panel talking about, which I was actually happy about because it talks about how they're not really having a class system, but you can still be good at stuff. So,
Right.
like, let's say you want to be a mercenary, or you want to be a pirate, or you want to rescue people, or you want, you're really good at mining and with all that stuff. And this is where, like we mentioned before, they went really in depth with mining. And I was like, dude, mining's super interesting. This is cool. You know,
Yeah.
he was talking about the various positions. So you got your scanning operator, who's a guy who essentially finds the asteroids in the system. And it's like, okay, this asteroid has like 2% tin or 3% lead or whatever it is we're looking for, right?
Yep.
Then you got your beam operator who gets to fire the cool lasers that cut into the rock and like break off chunks, but could also like potentially blow it up. So watch out.
Right. If you hit like a gas pocket on it or something, it'll
Or
blow
some
up in your
inert
face.
material that no
Yeah.
longer becomes inert when the beam interacts. Yeah.
Right.
Then you have your cargo loading operator, who's kind of like your tractor beam specialist, who'll like move the bad chunks of rock away and suck in the good chunks of rock. And then you have your refinery operator, who's going to be taking those chunks of rock and essentially have like a mini game where he refines it and makes the best quality metal and mineral and so forth from it, which sounds
Right.
so cool as well.
Yeah.
It was like all of those positions sounds to me like something awesome. And then the whole time, you also have your pilot who's like getting your beam operators and your tractor beam operator the best angle to get at what they're trying to cut or move, and also will be there for when your beam operator accidentally blows up the rock and you have to run away. So,
Oops.
yeah. And you can use NPCs for these positions, but like, I don't know if I'd trust an NPC to be in the pilot seat.
Yeah.
I'd feel like I'd want a player in that position.
Almost always. Yeah.
Unless it's a really good NPC pilot and they do phenomenal stuff with the AI. So
Yeah. I'd be nervous about having an AI pilot as well. It's
yeah,
like this asteroid just blew up. I don't
whoops,
think we need to get away here. It's okay.
it's okay.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Well, and then in general too, it's like, can you really trust the NPC not to run into something as well while he's sitting there in the pilot seat maneuvering you around? So,
Right. Exactly.
and they have said that all these you can do this all solo too. So you could be a guy sitting there, little by little, but it's going to take you forever, and you won't necessarily do as good a job. And I don't know. I feel like mining just sounds like something I'd want a crew for, whether it's a
Yeah.
crew of NPCs or whatever.
Yeah, this is mining isn't going to be something where you can just fly up to an asteroid, hit a button, and let it sit there for 5 minutes and just farm.
Yeah.
You have to do a lot to
Like
accomplish the
I
task.
almost feel like I want to be a full-time miner because it just sounds so interesting now.
It does.
You
I
know?
know.
Oh, dang it.
We're going to spend a lot of time in your reclaimer, I think.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, and then there's also the pioneering class, which they talked about, which is essentially your exploration class, where you go around and you discover jump points or these asteroids or comets or planets or what have you. So it's like there's a good variety of roles people can play in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the cool thing is you can seamlessly switch between them. Yeah, you're going to need the gear, but you don't have to level up anything, or all you have to do is
Yeah.
just be like, all right, I'm going to start doing this instead now.
Yeah, I want to today. I feel like instead of mining, I'm going to be a mercenary and go rescue people and so forth.
Right? Exactly.
Well, and then up next we also have panel two, which is a living, breathing world. And with that, we had attorney Zorovec, Chris Roberts, and Mark Skelton again talking about this portion. So first portion they talked about of this was the travel via quantum, which is we mentioned was the point 0.2 light speed and then jump gate travel and so forth, and how that's going to feel and how you're going to be traveling across the system with the quantum drive, and then also how you're going to be traveling between systems with the jump gates. And we had already mentioned, quantum drive is zero point 0.2 of light speed, and it takes roughly 10 minutes to travel the diameter of a system from one side to the other. So the main thing that we're mentioning that also comes into play is while you're doing that, you have to fly in a straight line, and if you get shot or if somebody gets in your way, it's immediately going to take you out of quantum travel. So
Right.
you know, don't try and do that in the middle of combat when everybody's shooting you. Or do and see what happens.
Yeah, up to you.
Yeah. Well, and then with jump gates, we have various jump gates are going to be rated essentially towards a level or class system that they put in place. So, like, your smallest ones are going to be your small craft level, like your single-seater fighters, your tiny ships. Then your class 2 are going to be meant for more medium level size ships, like your freelancers, your redeemers, your constellations, those type. And then you've got the class 3, which are meant for your big ass capital ships, like your Bengal carriers, your Idrises, and so forth. Which, obviously class 3s are going to take longer to go from place to place, whereas if you have a small class 1 or a class 2, you might be able to have a more direct shot to there. So,
Right.
there'll be different benefits to each class. And with that, in order to navigate jump points, you're going to need some sort of data. So either you're the first one flying it and you're setting up the data and you're recording the route, or somebody is coming behind you and following that route, so they're going to have to, um, follow along with whatever the nav data is you've provided. You know, obviously that's going to be fun either way.
Yeah.
So, especially on the smaller ones with all these loops and turns and bends, and you got to look out, or you'll get out of the jump point with a jump failure. And apparently that's not going to kill you instantly, which I'm kind of glad about, but it is going to damage your ship, which I'm also kind of glad about.
Right.
Like, I don't want it to be instant death if you mess up, but I don't want there to be no penalty for messing up either. So,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a pretty good balancing act,
yeah.
that they've done here. Okay, well, we don't want just people to get mad and just, die because they didn't quite do the jump right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, okay, well, you came close to the end of the jump. Well, you're going to take some damage, but we'll still spit you out somewhere in the system you were trying to get to.
Yeah, and he was giving
So,
Tony was giving some arbitrary numbers on that. It's like if you're 90% of the way, we'll say you make it, but you're damaged. Or if you only got 10% of the way, we'll say you stay in the same system, but you got damaged and didn't make it. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
and I imagine if you're in a tiny ship, you could just play it safe and always take a class 2 or class 3 jump point and have tons of room.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah. Um, and then, they talked a little bit about the art of the jump point and how they want it to look, and essentially they wanted to have kind of an alive feel to it, and each jump gate to have different characteristics, whether it's color scheme or like swirling pattern, or how it undulates in time and space dimensions and all that junk, which sounds cool, but I'm sure there will be like it'll be one of those situations where you can become jaded and then all of a sudden you hit that one wormhole where it's like just so weird and so unique. You're like, huh, you know, it's like
Yeah,
that
like
one
you get
stood out.
lost. Yeah, you get lost just looking at it, and you crash, and you're like, oh, oops, it was so pretty. Crap. But I think this is pretty cool. Did they mention at all if this was going to be if these were going to be procedurally generated? I can't remember them
I,
saying they were.
I feel like it would be. I
How
don't
does
feel
it
like
not?
how
Yeah,
how, how else are you gonna do it otherwise? You just have somebody who's an expert at flying that jump point every time it comes up on the. You
right.
know, it doesn't make sense for it to be the same every time either.
Yeah,
If it's supposed to change over time, so I'd imagine it is procedurally generated.
yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. Well, and then other than that, you go out even like a larger view, you're going to have your galactic map, which is also ever changing. So on your map, you might just be sitting there and then new distress signals pop up, or new objects that have been discovered pop up, or somebody has discovered this new jump path that's going to pop up too if they decide to share it. So that'll
Yeah,
be that'll be pretty cool. I'd love to just like take a time lapse of a galactic map and just see all the changes over like a 24-hour period and then show that on Reddit or something as a GIF.
that would be really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yep. And then can you be kicked out of quantum drive by objects in the way? Yes. That includes asteroids, or maybe you jump into the middle of a battle and all this stuff and you're like, "Oh crap, dodge." So
This actually kind of nullified an idea I had where you're going at quantum speed and like you just like try and aim and hit a capital ship with like an aurora to do more damage,
oh,
but that's apparently not going to happen. I'm sad.
maybe you should do like a 350R. That way, even though you come out, you can still go at a pretty decent speed, or like an M50. You know,
Just ram them
ram it.
anyway,
Yeah, you'll probably bounce off the shields and do no damage.
right?
Yeah. Well, and then you also have the environment is going to have an obvious history. They went into a little bit about that. Like I felt this one was more art oriented and a lot of stuff they'd already previously mentioned, but at the same time still interesting as heck. At least
Hmm.
this panel. So you have like your environment's supposed to have obvious history, so like signs of damage, fatigue. You're you're gonna have a base architecture that they're gonna use everywhere to kind of make it easier to build these places. But then with that, you'll have different props, different lighting, different blend systems, and all of these things that will go into making it look like a completely different place than all the other places that you've seen. So
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's really cool, and
yeah,
it'll again give it that kind of
lived in.
actual universe feel.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, with that, it's not just going to be like a cosmetic look. You'll have economies to these places as well that will be affected by, trade and all that stuff. So maybe the NPCs are a bunch of jerks when you show up. Maybe there's graffiti everywhere. Maybe the crime's gone up. It's not just, oh, this place is a smelly place. That's kind of cool. Oh, this place is a smelly place and I'm being robbed. That's not cool. you know.
Yeah, yeah, I like that the economy does affect what's going on the planet and
hmm
all that kind of stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, and then you have you can kind of corner the market on items was kind of a question asked, which they're saying it's unlikely, but and they had that caveat. If you're smart, you might be able to pull it off because let's say you stockpile weapons or medical supplies or the specific type of metal that people need, and then all of a sudden other factors keep that from being readily available, and then you can kind of determine the price that you want to sell it for, and the price goes way up. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's interesting. I would be very curious for an organization that's got like really smart members to kind of like go out of their way to design and mess up the economy of a solar system to the point where they make ridiculous profits and to like document the whole thing and then like release, a 20-30 minute video just talking about how they did it.
Oh yeah, well I imagine like there's going to be organizations that have spies and other organizations
Oh
like
yeah.
okay, I'm group A and I've got spies in group B and C and
hmm
I convinced group B and C to fight each other and then group A comes in with all these missiles and bullets and stuff. We're like, "Hey, we'll sell these to you. You guys need them. You're having a
Yeah.
war."
Yeah.
They make a bunch of money off of it that way.
Oh, or even like if it's all against NPC groups too. Like you've got like so I haven't mentioned this to you, but I kind of want there to be a Rebel Alliance. Like,
What?
a Rebel Alliance like in Star Wars against the UAE, which they're considering the Empire.
Yes.
and I want that organization to all work together and try and screw over the UE at any opportunity. Like I will even be like the logistics behind the scenes person that does all the stupid paperwork for this organization just to have this happen in Star Citizen.
Well, I imagine at some point there's going to be a civil war, like
Oh,
once the
yeah.
game comes out. I feel like so
Maybe we can
you
opportunistically take advantage of it then.
or cause it.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Hey Chris Roberts, I'm planning to cause a civil war in like 6 sectors. Is that cool? All right. Yeah. That would be one way for sure to get your character name mentioned on the Hollow News.
Oh yeah.
Well, and then going along with that, you also have storing stocks and commodities for later use. They're talking about having some sort of system in place where you can do that in landing areas or in your hangar or somewhat, so like you can kind of stockpile materials and things as well.
Right.
Then the next part was kind of going along in types of missions. There'll be the formally accepted missions, so like the local government requests you to rescue the scientists who have been kidnapped by these Tavaran extremists, or something along those lines. When you're like, okay, we'll do it, we'll bring our organization, that's a formally accepted mission. And then they'll kind of have random event missions where it's like, I'm walking down an alley and a guy just tried to mug me and I shot him in the face. Yeah.
Sucker.
Yeah, and then I robbed him and took
Yep.
all his stuff. Yeah. Well, and with that, you'll have actions and counteractions. Like because you decide to kill these pirates, then let's say this area of space becomes a little bit better for travel, and then you have more merchants go through it, and then pirates are like, "Hey, there are more merchants coming through," and then the pirates decide to come back. So
Right.
yeah.
They've really thought it out
Mhm.
really well, and I really am very curious to see how it all plays out. I mean, it's going to need tweaking, I'm sure, and
Oh yeah.
there's going to be ridiculous stuff that happens, but still, the way they're thinking about this, and like the fact that things kind of the more times that people do something, the more it affects the change and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Really cool.
Well, and in general, I like that it's not always going to be immediate change. Like they're talking, it'll be several days at least in the real world before all of these changes that have come into place will take effect. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
That's fun.
Well, and then they were talking about how are you going to rediscover stuff. Like let's say you find an asteroid field and there's a bunch of tin there. And this is their example, not mine. But you find a bunch of tin, and then people show up, they start mining it, and then over time, the price of tin drops, so people come to this asteroid field less and less, so they stop mining it as much, and eventually it disappears because the player traffic essentially isn't up enough for it to be maintained.
Right.
Which I kind of like. I kind of don't like, but I kind of like it the same way. Like gameplay mechanic wise, I agree with it, and like real world example wise, I don't. But
Yeah.
eh,
It kind of makes sense. I can't really think of a better way for them to do it myself.
yeah,
So it kind of makes sense that okay, well, there's this salvageable ship there that as long as people are actually actively taking the mission or just getting info from someone somewhere to salvage this ship, it'll
yeah.
stay there. But once people are done with it, then it just disappears, and a new event spawns somewhere else in the system to keep people. So
Well, yeah,
I like it.
and then the final question, which they spent like 15 or 20 minutes, I forget. It was a long response, but essentially the question was, what CIG safeguards are in place to protect the universe from going out of control? And like, let's say you have this 1,000-man organization that's deciding to grief it, or everybody's doing something, and how is that going to mess up how the world works? And essentially, from what they're saying, there's this separate AI economy program running in the background, and things don't necessarily need to match up one to one between the two systems, like the player system and the system, for it to persist. So
Right.
one of the examples they gave was, let's say there's a mission to clear out pirates, and like there are only really 10 pirates as far as this system's concerned, but let's say 20 player characters accept the mission and 20 player characters kill 20 pirates. Well, the system doesn't really care how many pirates you killed, they just know that the pirates got wiped out. So
Right.
it's going to behave accordingly. And I'm like, yeah, that's such a smart, genius way to deal with it. That makes it so nice and so good to have like your real world actions still matter. because you're not going to know how many people killed those pirates. As far as you're concerned, you could have been the only one, you and your friends.
Right, and it makes you feel like you accomplished something.
Oh yeah,
You know,
totally. It's like, yeah, I cleaned out those pirates by myself.
yeah,
Never mind those 50 other people I had no idea were doing it at the same time. So.
exactly. I really liked this section. I thought it was really interesting.
Mhm.
I thought they could have cut it down a little.
Well,
Um,
yeah, they could cut down a lot of these sections a
well,
little.
that's true.
Yeah.
But overall, I was really, really impressed with this answer and really thought it was really interesting.
Yeah. So moving on to panel three, which was entitled "Getting Social." This had John Erskine replacing the art director Mark Skelton, but we still had Tony and Chris as the other panelists. So for this one, they were talking about the various parts of the upcoming social module. So the first social module that's dropping with the FPS and all those changes we've previously mentioned, they're saying, oh, we're looking for about March, April. That's going to have your multiplayer hangars, FPS, planet-side exploration, shopping, contacts list, SimPod, yada yada yada. So we've already talked about this quite a bit, and they just kind of elaborated on it further, but nothing really new in terms of information.
Right.
Then we also had them talking about wanting to share ArcCorp functionality, and it doesn't sound like that will be quite ready yet, like the multiplayer hangars. It sounds like they need to optimize the servers and do all this back end work that kind of keeps them from going with that right now. So no browsing shops with your friends right away, it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't need that.
Yeah.
It's pretty inconsequential to me until the
I
persistent universe stuff comes
honestly I
out
don't even
anyway.
need the multiplayer hangars. I know they're doing it just to test their, multiplayer functionality anyway, so
Right.
it's not going to provide me with a ton of benefit for you to walk around my ships, which you can't even lift off in.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they're going to import the contact system from their website, so they're taking the list of people that you've essentially followed and moving that down in game, so you can now access it in game and do all of that. And this is essentially going to be their first iteration of pulling stuff down to the Persistent Universe server from their website to give a more in-depth feel to the game and to make you feel like what you're doing actually matters when you're in the game. So
Right.
that'll be cool. Along with that contact system, they're also going to have presence information. So will you be able to see your friend who's on a different planet in a different system or whatever, and know that he's in game? Yes, yeah, yeah, of course we're going to do that. It's essentially what they were saying. And the one thing that made me happy was they were talking about how org chat is the only thing in the game that really kind of breaks the physics and real world aspect, and that it will be faster than light and instantaneous, and you can do it. So it sounds like they're trying to make it so you don't need to have TeamSpeak or Skype or anything like that running in the background while you talk to each other. That
Right.
that said, I might still do TeamSpeak anyway, just because if I want to switch games or I'm talking to people not in Star Citizen, it's better to have. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's good that they are implementing an in-game system for it because people are just gonna, use TeamSpeak or, Skype, you're right, or whatever
mhm,
instead. So, yeah, it's necessary for them to be doing this. So I'm glad they are.
yeah. Well, and then kind of after that, they were talking they're going to try and add in a buy and sell, leave the planet, and quantum travel module coming out later in the year, so that you can add a little bit more functionality to what they're coming out with in the context social module. So,
Right.
and then I think there was a third module, but I didn't catch what that one was that they were going to plan to release by the end of the year too. So hopefully that's travel between systems.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
I
what
think
I
that's what it
imagine.
was.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
hmm Well, and then they had a follow-up question that how have your plans changed over time? And Chris Roberts was essentially like saying, well, more money, more functionality, more immersion. It's just everything. We just made it bigger and more expansive with the more funding we got. So cool.
Yep.
Well, and then the last part, they were talking about how they want to have the one giant server functionality with the behind the scenes, doing all the heavy lifting, so you never really notice. So, like, your friend is in Australia, another friend is in the UK, and you're in America, and then a third friend's in Korea, and you all want to party up and play together. Well, you can, and that's not a big deal, and you don't need to be on any separate server system.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. That is something I've been waiting for a game to successfully do for a very, very long time. So I'm really hoping that it works and it pans out.
Yeah. Well, and then they went into individual questions. So player inventory, will you be able to loot full player bodies? Yeah. So, you can
Yep.
strip them naked except for the underwear, apparently. Items will only persist as long as an instance exists. So it's not like you can rob a guy, dump his cargo in the asteroid field, and come back for it later. It will disappear as soon as you leave. Um,
Right. And there are only certain areas that are permanent
yeah,
instances where items will persist. So,
like space stations, hangars, that type of thing.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Well, or you could, leave one of your. I was thinking you could leave a guy there, go back with like a giant ship, and while he's still there holding the instance essentially, and come
right,
back in and load all the cargo. That would be a way to get around it.
right. That's how you'd have to do it. You'd have to have one person in their single seat fighter just kind of hang out,
Yeah,
by
I'm
the
gonna eat a
salvage.
burrito while you guys
Yep,
travel.
exactly.
And then
We'll get the big ship.
can you sell data and make it a trap? No. It was, I think the way the guy worded the question was, can I scout a nav point, leave a fleet of hostile ships at the one end of the nav point, and then sell the data to people at the other end, and then they come through and we ambush them? And it was essentially, no, you can't do that. But we
I
like the
like
way
the
you think.
idea.
Yeah, we like the
Yeah.
way you think, but no. Well, and then how does data become available to players? Well, this was a question in general about metrics and what data will be available in the real world, like your kill data and stuff like that. And the way that they were answering it, and I think John actually took a point on this, and then Tony and Chris kind of jumped in after, was essentially we already give you a ton of that data already. We give you
Right.
leaderboards and all of that, and you have organizations and who belongs to what. So, some of the data is already readily available, and people have figured out how to access it and so forth. But obviously, there's certain data we don't want to be readily available to everybody. So, it'll be a little of yes, a little no.
Yeah, and
So,
that all makes sense. I was kind of surprised by the question because I felt like, well, they already give us quite a bit of data. I
yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if they expand that.
Like I imagine on your Mobi you'll probably have like a log or something of like kills and
Yeah,
record and stuff like that too that you can look at yourself. So.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and then another thing was tracking other players. How will you be able to do that? And essentially, the way it works is with the instancing. If you've encountered people and they're your nemesis, or either your friends, or they're in your party, those will get priority to be in the same instance as you. Or like if you're tracking a bounty and he's a person of interest, that will be in your instance too. So that's essentially how you're going to be able to track other people, is you'll have encountered them previously, or you'll go out of your way to form a relationship.
Right, or in some cases, you could like buy data about them off
Yeah,
other people that have
that too.
encountered them, and there will be a little bit of delay if you're like a bounty hunter, like on the information you get about people. Obviously, it'll be just like a lot of the other data in the game where it's
Yeah.
not instantaneous. Oh, okay, well, we last saw this guy here,
It's,
so
you're
maybe
Boba
he's still
Fett and you're
there.
looking for someone named Han
Oh,
Solo, but
yeah.
we haven't had that picture. Oh, that dude just shot that green alien at that table. That's weird. All right, well. Yeah, that would just figure.
Yep, yep. So it was cool. It made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, and then the last kind of separate video, they had their Games Ideas Forum. So the Games Ideas Forum was essentially their pitch forum for anybody who had an idea to just throw it at them, and we'll see if we like it or we don't. And unfortunately, the only one I really liked was the first one. you know,
Yeah.
all the others were kind of like, or we already knew they were going to do it.
Right. Right.
So very first question I thought was great. I love this idea. And it sounded like Chris Roberts loved the idea too, which essentially concerning their Death of a Spaceman mechanic, where you have, your previous character is supposed to be the benefactor to your current character. And he was wondering, could you have like little hollow images or pictures around of like your current character with the previous character in the same image, because you're supposed to have known each other, you're supposed to be either friends or family or whatever.
Yeah.
which I thought, oh, that'd be great. And then I kept thinking, oh man, could you imagine like a wall of benefactors after like a couple of years of playing the game, where it's like you got your very first character and then the second character in the first image, and then you got the second character and the third character in the second image, and the third character in the fourth, and so on. You
Yeah,
know?
it's like going to your grandparents' house.
Oh yeah,
You know, there's just like pictures of everybody.
it's like this tree of character death that you just have instead of a tree of life of family.
Yeah.
It's a tree of character death, and it just like hangs in your hanger wall, and you're on like photo 90, and you're just like, oh man, I've died a lot in this game. Yeah, so
Yeah, it was a good question. I agree.
yeah,
I liked it.
that'll be cool. Hopefully they do it. Then the next question was about fish in a fish tank. Who cares?
Yep.
You want your saltwater fish and your freshwater fish, and you that just it annoyed me. He wasted their time with a stupid question like that. Frankly,
It was clearly a troll question.
yeah,
Like, come on, man.
it's like there's a million important questions to ask, like different ship types, how they're going to balance, all that type of thing, and you ask about fish.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is like half of these were questions. This isn't supposed to be a question forum. This was supposed to be an idea forum where you present them with a pitch, not come
Yeah,
up there and be like, "Are you guys gonna do this in the game?"
yeah,
No,
no.
it's not the point of this.
Ugh. Anyway, you can tell how much we love this one. This video was clearly our favorite of the five. God. Well, and then there's they kind of already addressed this, so I was kind of annoyed by this next question too. Was the organizations when they hate each other and you help out one, does it affect your reputation with the other one and vice versa? Like if you've you've got two various like you've got a pirate group and another pirate group and they hate each other and you help the one pirate group out, will the other pirate group hate you more? Yes. Done.
Surprise.
Question answered. It was previously answered in 10 for the chairman, which he obviously didn't watch.
No. In some ways, I can understand not watching all these videos like we do and all that stuff, but still at the same time, like I'd research the question before
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna
make
ask
make
it, or it's not
make
a
sure.
question. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even call it that.
Yeah,
Research my pitch before I try and give it to them.
yeah. Like the only question I would ask is if there were plans for smaller carriers than the Pegasus, because you have your smaller organizations where they might not have a need for a ship that large, but they still want to carry fighters around place to place. That would be the question I'd ask, because I haven't heard anything about that.
Right.
And he would say no, or he would say, that's an idea we might have eventually, but no, not
Right.
right now.
Right. Right.
And it wouldn't
With you
even
there.
be a question. It would be, hey, can we have a a ship for
Right.
smaller
Right. You'd
organization?
be pitching that type of ship.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
that's the only question I'd feel comfortable asking because I feel like everything else will either be addressed or whatever.
And of course, my pitch would be, "Hey, can we have a web interface to change the weapons and stuff on our ships?" Great
No,
pitch
that's
before on the
stupid.
forums.
No.
But and like the thing is, people are like, "Well, it breaks immersion." You know, you come in and your ship's already changed up. Well, I'm like, "Well, it's fine if it takes time for it to change out, like it would if you were in game. You know, that's totally
Which
fine."
now
Just
they've said they're going to have phone apps and stuff like that for organization
right,
leaders. So how is that not breaking
right,
immersion?
right,
But yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Anyway, moving on.
Well, and then next question after that was multiple characters for game packs. You can have multiple characters, so you've got this character will be a PC, these characters will be NPCs, and they will crew for your PC. And then your friends can play your PCs as NPCs, and then you could play a different NPC as a PC and make your current PC an NPC. And yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense when I say it like that, but that was essentially the question we got, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. You know,
So
I
it's like,
actually
who
find this.
cares?
Yeah, I actually find this kind of interesting. Like in that can jump in as your friend's NPC, but like if other than the fact that I'm like like six systems over from you, I would rather be there myself as my character, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't want
You
to
know,
keep switching to
right,
a different PC every week either. Like, I don't want to
right,
play as two different PCs. I want to have my guy, and that's my
right,
guy, especially since
exactly,
it's not a leveling based system and I can just change my profession at any time.
right,
If it was like an old school MMO and I'm like, oh, I have to play my wizard and then I have to play my tank, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have multiple characters. But if it's a system where it's just whatever you feel like doing is what you do, it makes no sense to have multiple characters.
I agree. Yep.
So, whatever. And then next pitch. I'll call them pitches, even though they're not. Settlements, colonies on newly discovered worlds, and I feel like this was also talked about previously in like around the verse or 10 for the chairman or 10 for producers or something, where they're like, yeah, we do want eventually to have player colonies and settlements. So
But that's way down the road. That's
yeah,
like,
that's like
and
year
they
three.
called it, yeah, they called it end game content. So yeah,
End game content. Wow.
yeah,
That would be interesting. Well, and then they have players controlling NPCs and share on multiple accounts.
yep.
So
Talked about that.
talked about that. Crafting professions, can players see the modifications? And he's like, yes, of course. Yeah, I was like, yes, of course. You know, it'd be stupid for you to sell something and not have the modifications listed on what you're trying to sell. You know, it's weird.
Right. I kind of get what he was trying to get at, where he was like, you know, could I maybe like scam the auction system and like
Right.
sell an item that was actually damaged as though it was whole, or could I buy items that, you know, were already damaged on the auction and fix them? And I'm like, well, other than the scamming people in the auction house, yes,
Yeah.
obviously you can buy damaged goods on the market and fix them yourself. Like, why wouldn't you be able to?
Yeah, and it makes sense for you to be able to because like they don't want to spend the time or materials, but they know somebody will want to use. Like, let's say you find a
Right.
really good blaster rifle. I don't. Yeah, I know there aren't blaster rifles in this game, but you know, it's an example. Let's
Yeah.
say you've got a really good Merstone model T21 blaster rifle, and you realize that you're not going to spend the actually it would be a blast tech is the T21. I apologize. I have just lost
Wow.
some. I corrected myself though.
There goes
Anyway,
some nerd cred.
yep. So you find a broken version of that, and you don't really want to put in the mats to repair it, but you also want to make some money off of it, so you throw it on the auction house. And somebody's like, dude, I've been looking for one of those. I have the materials to repair it. Yeah, I'll buy that. And
Exactly.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Thank God I saved myself. I almost incorrectly, arbitrarily used a wrong company and a fictional gun from a fictional universe for a fictional company.
How dare you?
That would have been awkward.
That was close, man.
Yeah. Well, then we have the Nemesis system, which they talked about a little bit, and you know, yeah, we're gonna have people that hate your guts and want to kill you and interfere with your stuff.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind this question, even though they've already talked
Well,
about it.
I think this question
Um,
actually came in before they talked about it, so
oh,
I
that
think
could
this
be.
was something that they addressed specifically because it came up in the town hall. So this one I'm fine with.
Okay,
And
yeah, I think
actually,
you're right.
yeah, it wasn't a bad idea, you know, to
No.
have people
Well, and
hate
it's
yourself.
yeah, it's cool. I didn't even know about the Shadows of Mordor Nemesis system. I've never played it or really known anyone who's played it.
I think Paradigm plays it, or one of
Does he?
those.
He
Yeah,
probably does.
somebody we know plays
He
it.
likes
I
the
know.
Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was cool. I really like this, and it sounds like they're going to even expand even more upon this system. So, really looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
It's gonna be weird to see how like your relationship tag is tagged to mine. Are we gonna be nemesis or friends? Because I know we're gonna screw each other over all the time just for fun. It's
Yeah,
like
that will be interesting.
he's in my organization, he's on my friends list, but he's also the guy I hate the most.
Right? He's accidentally killed me a couple times.
Accidentally, wake, quake, yeah, accidentally.
Like, I've never put my wing through your cockpit. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And then will we have all out NPC wars? And it's you know, yeah, we will. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of everybody figured it, but I'm glad
Right.
he put it out there in case they were like, no, why would we do that? That doesn't make. Of course, we're gonna have NPC wars. You know.
Yep.
Then somebody was like, hey, can we have fauna? I want to collect some pets, and I was just like, ugh. I,
Yeah, I don't know if he was like.
I
Sometimes I feel like maybe they just get nervous and don't quite word their questions the way that they mean to.
like
'Cause, like,
if he's one like on certain planets where we have different types of animals that we can like use as beasts of burden and laborers and ride, that's cool, you know.
right?
But if he's like, I want a yellow kitten and I want a black kitten and I want a red kitten, you know, that's just waste of time and stupid. I'm sorry.
Well,
I would rather
yeah,
they focus on something else.
I felt like he was maybe more going for like, okay, there's certain plants and animals on this planet that are used for like certain types of medicine or like that kind of
Okay.
thing. Maybe
That I'm
that
fine
was
with
what I
too.
was thinking.
That I'm fine with too, if that's the
Which
case.
I
Like that makes
again,
sense.
yeah, and that makes sense. So that's what I'm hoping he was going for.
The black kittens make really good stew, by the way.
Yeah, the best.
And the red kittens you can use as socks after you skin them.
Wow.
I'm gonna get so much hate mail from cat lovers now.
Incoming PETA complaints.
Yeah, well, I never cared about those before. Um, and then the follow-up question after that was old school guns. Do we want to see? We want to see old school guns because hey, if it's a really good gun now, why can't we still use it in the future? And Chris was kind of like, yeah, but this is the future. You know, we don't still use muskets. So that's kind of the attitude I got of him. But other people are like, yeah, those guns are cool. We're gonna put them in. And I'm like, no, I agree with Chris. This is the future. We don't still use muskets.
Yeah, I don't really get why you'd want like old guns.
Maybe it's like a collectible, you know?
Sure, something to display in my
Yeah,
hangar.
but
Fine.
not something you'd ever use.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and then the following pitch was paying the next of kin of crimes committed. And my first thought was, if I'm a pirate and their next of kin demands money from me, first thing I'm going to do is kill that next of kin.
Right.
And then just keep killing them down the line until the entire population of the planet is gone. You know?
Yeah, this was a pretty odd suggestion. I don't really know how you enforce it. It's like we need an entire like law system and tribunal for it. Like
Yeah.
you'd have to record, you'd have to go over the like recording of the footage.
And some of those would be hilarious. Did you or
Yes.
did you not blow his head off and then teabag him for 10 minutes? You know? It would be like, if I was on that jury, I couldn't make it through without laughing, you know?
That's true. It would make it pretty hilarious. I'd almost want to be a lawyer just to find the most absurd cases I could and like
Oh, yeah.
present them.
Did you or did you not convince the defendant that he needed to get to this system by 3 o'clock in order to meet this girl who wanted him in real life? Yeah.
Did you? Or
Did
you
you-
not catfish this poor bastard?
Did you or did you not then subsequently have him jump into the middle of a minefield and blow up and die and then take his stuff? Yeah,
Plead the fifth.
and plead the fifth. Oh well, we can't prove
Well,
it.
Yeah. No, this
I
is
mean,
just
that's why
it was a weird
it'd be
question.
so weird.
It was. I was just like, what were you thinking with this? Like, are you gonna feel like when somebody kills you, that you deserve money from them? Like, no, that's not how this works.
It's a game. Like I get,
Right.
they want that real world aspect, but remember, guys, this is a game.
Right.
When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it should be fun, and real world's great and all until it starts to break the funness.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know. All right. Well, thank God.
Hey, we're done.
We got through the persistent town hall, and this is officially the longest show that we've ever done because it was 5 hours of content boiled down to hour and a half, or I don't know, however long we've been
Over
recording.
that. Yeah.
All right.
Good lord. Well, hey, we're done. We did it. We did it, guys.
Whew. Thank God. Good job, guys.
Thanks for
Golf-
sticking around.
Golf clap.
It's like 3 of you who listen to the whole thing.
Dude, I don't know if, like, I always watch our podcasts, but this one's long. I might, like,
Yeah.
late at night watch this, just as I'm falling asleep type thing.
Yeah, I don't blame anybody. This one's long. Although we'll save you some time, so hopefully they realize that. I don't
Yeah.
know if they will. Probably
It's
not.
it's 5 hours condensed in an hour and a half. I mean, I'd take that trade.
Oh yeah.
Except for Das Boot.
We dived on that grenade for you guys.
Get back! We're Captain America, the skinny one. Get back!
Skinny one.
Is this a test?
Oh my god.
Oh, it's the first thing I thought of when you said that. I'm sorry.
Uh,
All right. We will see you guys then on Wednesday.
peace.